We have to win the youth. Now we're going to lose them.
And I remember not wanting to do something for God and being desperate and not feeling like I fit in and feeling like I was lost because there was nothing there for me to get into, me to do. And when Pastor Roman and Pastor Brian began to work with the youth, they gave me value, worth. I felt that, hey, I can impart, I can be a part of this.
My mentality was whatever Pastor Roman was putting into me as a disciple at the time, and still today, was that what was being put into me, I needed to put that into the youth. And whatever Nora was putting into my wife, Aisha, she was putting that into the girls.
In that, the new challenge is, where do you go from here? Because everything's already been done. Everything's already been refined. Everything's already... And so I began to notice that these teenagers, they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing.
Hi, welcome back to the Gen Up Podcast. We're so excited to have you here with us today. We have a very exciting episode, but before we begin that, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you have an opportunity, please share this with somebody that you think will make an impact. We have a very exciting episode for you today. We have pastors from 3 different continents coming. They came in for conference. We took advantage. All these men are missionaries. They're very successful pastors, and all of them have experience as youth pastors in the McAllen Church. So we just want to get some of their experience. We want them to share some of their stories, some of their wisdom. It's my honor to introduce these men to you, Pastor Brian Castillo, Pastor Robert Hernandez, and Pastor Beto Rivas. So we're going to get started today. We're going to be talking about youth ministry, unpacking our youth ministry. But first of all, before we begin, I want to introduce you guys. So I want to know a little bit more about you, how you came to salvation, how you came to church, what was it like being a youth in our church. So I want to start first of all with Pastor Beto. I just want to know, how did you come to church? What was it like? How old were you? What was it like growing up as a youth? Could you start telling us about that?
Yeah, so we started coming, my family and I started coming when I was around 12 years old. We came because our neighbor invited us. And we were in the old building, Marlene's Hall, when we started coming back in 2007. And I remember vividly when we came, I was watching a boot camp video on a Sunday. And, the teens at the time, they did their whole presentation. They showed the video. And I was sitting next to my mom, and I go over to her ear, and I said, I don't want to go to that. I was scared. I was a chubby kid. I didn't want to do that physical exercise. I was like, heck, I'm not doing that. And then fast forward a year, I'm 13 and I go to boot camp. But I thank God that I went because that's where I got saved. That is where I experienced the presence of God personally for the first time. The first service, which is Tuesday night, pastor be preaching. I don't know what he preached on. I don't know who prayed with me. I don't remember the prayer, but I remember just feeling the presence of God, and that changed my entire life. The trajectory of my life changed, and so at 13 I got saved. I felt the call to preach when I was 16 years old, when I got serious for God, and then when I turned 19, I got married. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful to God for that boot camp, getting saved that young and serving God in my teenage years. I got saved at 13 years old.
Thank God for boot camp.
Amen.
Pastor Ruby's boot camp. It's amazing. I got saved there too. Same age, 13. Awesome. Praise God. Pastor Brian, what about you, Pastor? What was it like? Did you grow up in church? Were you saved all that time like Pastor Beto, or was it different for you?
No, my mom came into the church when I was 3 years old, coming from a broken home, and I immediately got immersed into children's church and stuff like that, and I can't point to a day where I was saved as a child, but I was aware of Christ and my need for His forgiveness. So I was coming to church for a long time like that until I got to middle school. That's when I really fell into sin. And so my church life was a different life from what I had in school with my friends outside of school, in the neighborhood there. And so I got involved in things that I shouldn't have. I didn't get immersed in drugs, but I experimented with that. But it was more pride and rebellion that I think defined my life. I was a very rebellious teenager. I was a very hateful teenager. And I was a very defiant teenager, specifically against authority. I hated authority.
Wow.
And so I just could not receive from anyone. And so one day I get hurt. I get an injury which affects my running career, and I was incapable of chasing certain things in my life. God humbled me. He made me see my rebellion not just as rebellion, but he made me see it as sin for what it was.
Yeah.
I came to see the reality not only of my sin, but of my sinfulness. And I remember in my room, as I'm sitting there, I cry out to God. I repent of my sins. I put my faith in Jesus Christ. And I turn my heart over to him. And I believe I was 17 when I was converted, completely converted, no longer playing the church game. And then my life just completely was changed by Jesus Christ at that point.
Wow, that's true. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did it begin like your seriousness for God and discipleship begin at 17, or did that take a little bit of time before you begin to really dig in deep in that area of your life?
No, my seriousness for God seriousness as far as disciplined didn't begin till later, but I would say my radicalness began there.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's when we began to just outreach wherever we could, evangelize everywhere we could. We were very radical as teenagers, preaching on tables, going to the mall. We would stand in different areas of the cafeteria of the mall. One guy would start preaching on a table, and when the security went at him, another one of us would pop out on another set of tables, and we'd start street preaching. We'd get kicked out, but it was a thrill. We just wanted to do something for Jesus.
Wow.
So, yeah, I would say more so, I would call it just radical. We were radical at that point.
Wow. Okay. And Pastor Robert, I know you kind of grew up in the same age group as Pastor Brian. Was your experience the same, or was it different? Did you get saved super young? Did you become radical? Or when was that encounter with God? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so I came into the church when I was 6 years old. And so I went through the children's church process, in the plays that children's church do. I knew the songs, knew the VeggieTale songs.
Yeah.
And I went through the teenage boot camp,
Yeah.
teenage classes. But I had a broken home. I had a dad that was not living with my mom, in the drugs, in the streets. And so what began to happen is the teenage years, 16, 17, began to pull on me. The high school influence began to pull on me more than God, than the church. And so at 17, I didn't get to graduate, but I made the decision to leave the church and go live with my dad. Wow. And so I went to live with my dad. That's where life got very difficult. The drugs, the gangs he introduced me to. Life was just downhill. And so for the next 4 years, I found myself like the prodigal son. I took an inheritance I had being raised in church that was given to me and went to live life on your own, At that age, 17, 18, we all know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We all know what's best. And I found myself destroying my life, tattooing myself, in jail, doing drugs. And at 21 years old, I found myself in an empty house, no drugs, no money. And I remembered, there's church tonight. Because I was raised to be in church on Wednesday.
Right.
So at that moment, in 4 years of my rebellion, never once, like the prodigal son, never once, to that moment where he came to his senses.
Yeah.
That moment was at 21 years old on a Wednesday night that I
Wow.
came to my senses and I went back to church. 6 months later, Pastor Roman took over our church. I got saved, and that's when my life changed
Wow.
completely. And so, but I credit my mom, being a single mother with 2 kids, taking me to church since I was 6,
Yeah.
taking me to boot camp. And so that really impacted me later, right? Like, they don't forget the youth
Yeah.
when they're invested in God and in the church. So because of that, by the grace of God, I got a second chance at 21. I got saved.
Man, that's crazy. That's why it's so important, though, that we have things like youth ministry, children's church, preteens, and then teen Bible study to lay that foundation. Because the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he will not depart from it.
Yes.
It's a perfect example.
Yeah.
And so, what was it like then when the youth ministry, when you guys were young? Do you guys remember what that experience was like? How it began to form and to develop into what it is? What was that like for y'all?
Well, the youth ministry was, I would say, a bit unstructured, and so we, they were trying their best. It wasn't like they weren't trying. I think they just didn't have any direction. And so because of that, us being rebellious, when I say us, I mean the teenagers of mine and Joe Albert's age, we were very dominant. And so we had very dominant personality. So we would take over the Bible studies. We were very defiant, things like that. And so we looked at Bible study as, hey, let's go hang out with our unsaved friends from church. So, we would get there, and we were just looking forward to it being over, and then we could start messing around afterwards. So that would be what it was like before. But again, the leaders were trying. I think they just did not have any direction.
Yeah.
And so when Pastor Roman took over, he was able to bring a lot of direction. I remember when he came in, one of the things that I told him, because I was already saved, I was converted, even married, and I told him, if you want me to, I'll cut my hair, because I still had a very immature personality, and it was manifested in my hair. I had a Mexican afro, and I said, I can cut it. And he said, no. He said, no, that's fine. I'm really happy to see that there's a lot of young people here, because I really like young people. And he said, keep a secret. Young people are my favorite. And I remember that stayed with me. At the time, I was the assistant youth Bible study leader. And so when Pastor Roman came in, eventually after some time, he himself took over the youth, and he pulled me aside and said, I'm going to keep you as the assistant. And he gave me these not ground rules, these guidelines that he was going to follow, which was, we're not going to have this playful setting in the youth, but I'm going to preach to them in these youth Bible study nights on Friday nights. And so that's what he began to do, and eventually he handed that over to us to start running. But that's the way it started, right? It came from that, and when Pastor Roman came in, I think he always had a passion to do something with the youth, because the youth weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
We were destructive, and because we had no direction. And so when Pastor Roman came in, he implemented direction into the youth, and then it just took off from there.
Wow. Do you remember, Pastor Beto, that season? Because I think Pastor Robert wasn't there at the time, or he'd just gotten saved. But I know that, for you and I, we were teenagers when Pastor Brian and when Pastor Roman took over and Pastor Brian started assisting. Do you remember that time? What was it like?
Yeah, so I do remember because when we started going, I had become a teenager. I was kind of on the tail end of what was the youth ministry prior to Pastor arriving there. So when he took it over, and said, I'm going to be in charge, and Pastor Brian was assisting, the structure was noticeably different, the direction, what we would do, but it wasn't this crazy strict regimen. And you would hate to go to Bible study.
Yeah.
It was refreshing. It was something different that we looked forward to. That now, instead of doing a lesson or doing a testimony night, or somebody, raise your hand, what do you think about this text? Now they're actually preaching to you a message that's tailored for you, for youth, for a teenager. And so you would look forward to that. And, after the preaching, after the Bible study, we would still hang out. They would have hot Cheetos with cheese. Come on, somebody. Chili cheese hot dogs.
Yeah.
Those were great times. And we would still hang out, do charades. We'd just, do whatever games inside. Sometimes we'd go outside and have a volleyball or a football. And so the structure changed, but for the better.
Yeah.
And to Pastor Brian's point, as a teenager, when you don't have direction, you just get bored, or you're fidgeting around, and you just start messing around naturally.
Yeah.
And so because there was more of a structure, more direction, things were more intentional, it was a change for the better. And it was great. We would like I said, play the games or whatever. Sometimes we would just start jamming out, get the instruments. But those were good times. It was a noticeable change, but it was for the better.
You know what I always appreciated about being a teenager, especially like I got saved when Pastor Roman came. I had just turned 14, and I remember not wanting to do something for God and being desperate and not feeling like I fit in, and feeling like I was lost because there was nothing there for me to get into, me to do. And when Pastor Roman and Pastor Brian began to work with the youth, they gave me value, worth. I felt that, hey, I can impart, I can be a part of this. And I always felt like there was just this, because I struggled with rejection. And I struggled with this, man, am I worthy? Am I worth it? Does anybody? And coming into the teenagers and not knowing anybody and being awkward and not being able to communicate very well. And then Pastor Brian and Pastor Roman just saying, hey, you know what? I want to use you. Let's do this. Let's do that. Hey, come spend a night at my house.
That's when you got saved.
And then it's just like you just hanging out and spending time. And it like changed my life. It wasn't even any... yes, it was the spiritual, it was the discipline, it was the preaching, but it was also the impartation of you just being there for me. And that changed the whole trajectory of my life because I'd never had that connection with anybody before. And what began the process of discipleship in the youth? Like, what was there something that Pastor Roman imparted into you that said, hey, this is what I want to do? Or did it begin to evolve organically? Because I know that we eventually started doing park outreaches and preaching on tables and things like that.
NP night.
NP night. What inspired that? Like, where did that come from?
Well, a lot of it was Pastor Roman. Pastor Roman just always, when he came in, he wanted me to lead the youth, but he wanted to be involved in what was happening. And he had a lot of ideas. The park outreaches, that's Pastor Roman. The MP nights for the youth, that's Pastor Roman. Those are all his ideas. So, but at the same time, the discipleship, I think, was that my mentality coming into leading the youth was not simply having a group of kids to keep entertained for a few minutes, but that my mentality was whatever Pastor Roman was putting into me as a disciple at the time, and still today, was that what it was being put into me, I needed to put that into the youth. And so, and whatever Nora was putting into my wife, Aisha, she was putting that into the girls. And so that meant because you can't disciple from a distance.
Yeah.
That's something Pastor Roman has always told us. So we were very involved in the youth's lives. But then there was the element of ministry, and that created opportunities for whether it was direction, correction, addressing certain things, and then came the idea of giving people teenagers expression, which is where Pastor came up with the idea of doing park outreaches, because at the time we had concert preachers preaching concerts, but Pastor really wanted to have a platform where he could give the youth, the teenagers, the 15-year-olds, the 16, 17-year-olds, a platform from which they could minister and express their calling. And so this is when we came up with doing park outreaches. And I remember as we're sitting there, we're figuring this out, and the idea was to get one of the young men that says they're called, give them the opportunity to preach, but they were to be in charge of everything. That means loading the car, the truck, with all the equipment, and then not only that, but teenagers were going to be in charge of setting everything up. So you were in charge of the sound, other guys were in charge of setting up the stage, and that young man was also responsible for buying his own flyers and getting his own permit. And so it put a responsibility on them that, many would say, you can't let a teenager do that, but they figured it out. I remember Brandon. He looked for sponsors. He went around knocking on doors, and he got $50, and he bought a pack of 100 flyers, and he passed them all out. He got his own permit. He went to the city by himself, got all that done. But then my wife also had the girls. My wife would pick a girl. The first one was Alani, Beto's wife. Now.
Future.
I had my eyes on her.
So she was chosen to lead the girl part of it, which was she was in charge of making sure we had food for this outreach, making sure she had helpers for this outreach, and of course she was responsible for getting the hot dogs and the hot dog buns and the drinks, and so they were in charge of all of that. And we would go into parks, and Pastor Roman made it very clear he did not want any adults there. The only adult there was my wife and I, and the assistant, whoever was at that time, Pastor Joe Albert, or there was another person there as well, that would go, and then we would have a concert, and the teenagers would do everything. Everything. I was not to help them do anything. They would preach the altar call. They would pull on people, and people would get saved. We saw people get saved. We saw people give their lives to Jesus Christ. And so then it just took off from there, right? Discipleship was a very focal point, and I think it continues to be a focal point in our youth ministry. It's not just keeping kids entertained, but giving them purpose and discipleship.
I want to add to that. So that first park outreach, by that point, I don't know if it was like a year after, a year and a half. I don't remember the timeline, the time frame. But I remember Brandon was the first preacher, did the first park outreach, and we're in the restroom at the church. We're about to load all the equipment. He's like shaving. I'm there. I'm like, bro, like, how are we gonna do this? But we felt, not that this is just coming to mind now, but it just felt like we can do this. We weren't freaking out. We weren't. We were nervous. But we weren't just like so nervous that we were gonna freeze up there.
Yeah.
We just felt like we can do this. This is not impossible.
Yeah.
We can make this happen, and not out of arrogance. We knew that God needed to get involved, but it was just a testament to how things were changing in the youth ministry, with discipleship, with pastor putting responsibility on us, the correction, the believing in us. So when it got to that point, we were still teenagers. We were still messing around. You know, you're a teenager. You're not, but we just felt like, man, this is not. We can do this.
Yeah.
And now that you're saying that, the memory just triggered. We're in that restaurant. We're like, bro, it's gonna be awesome. People are gonna get saved.
Yeah.
It was a powerful. That first one was. I remember it to this day.
Do you remember how old you were?
I think because I was probably I was 17. It was like my junior year going into my senior year, so I was 17.
Yeah, so that continued to be something we did when this generation went on. There was Albert, there was
My brother Eric.
Eric. Yeah, and so the next generation got to experience this as well and have that opportunity as well.
You know, and that's the thing that amazes me is like looking back as a teenager, like you said, we just had this confidence that we could take the world. Like we just believed in it. We didn't even know what we were doing, but we knew that as long as we served God and we did what was right and we pursued this, we could take a nation.
Yeah.
We could change the world. We could make impact. It didn't matter. Nothing was going to stop us. Because I remember my first park outreach. It was just like delay after delay, and I finally get to do one. And then I'm calling in, hey, I need a permit. And they're like, oh, you're from the door? We're not going to give you guys permits anymore. And I'm like, what? And that was so like key, is just this confidence that even though we were still teenagers and we still like we were still kids, like we still hung out, we went to parks and played tag and
Still showing up late.
exactly. But there was, like you said, there was a responsibility and there was this confidence that, hey, no matter what, we're going to do the will of God and we're going to change the world, because that's what Pastor's doing. That's what Pastor Brian's doing.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And then when one does it and you see, for lack of a better word, the success, right? The turnout, people getting saved, nothing falls apart, everything. And then it's like a wildfire, a domino effect. The next guy's like, oh, I can do it too.
Yeah.
And I can do it too. I remember one of the teenagers, this was already, I think, when I was a youth pastor. I was just serving on staff. I don't remember. But one of the teenagers mentioned, like, yeah, I remember when I was in children's church and I was seeing you guys run the park outreaches. And so it's just this domino effect that resonates over the years. Like, oh, well, I can do it too.
Yeah.
And it's just, it was great.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the guys, though. I think it was very key that we were seeing the girls develop in this through this avenue.
Right.
Alani, Amanda, Isabel, Sabrina, and I can't remember off the top of my head everybody, but these girls were learning how to run events like this on their end. They were learning delegation. They were learning how to be on time, how to communicate. Hey, I need this, I need that. And it creates somewhere where we could say, okay, this is how you do this. Because in the past, we didn't have that. It was just like, hey, we just need you to sit still and behave.
Yeah.
But now it was, okay, this is how you run an outreach. This is how you talk to people. This is how you pull an altar call. This is how you pray with somebody. It created all of these avenues where we could teach and not just expect good behavior, because it gave an again I'm repeating myself, but it gave an avenue for purpose.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember you get sent out. Everybody's crying and weeping. You go and you become a missionary in Brazil, and Pastor Drobert, you take over. And it was like as soon as you stepped in, it was almost like a transition, not only with Pastor Brian and his leadership, but also the teenagers. There was a transition where the older teenagers were leaving Bible study, and now you had this whole new batch of teenagers. So what was that like, you coming in, becoming the youth leader? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so I was out pioneering in Detroit when I came back. So now I step in and it's a whole different youth. I think the oldest one was 15 maybe, and the youngest one was 12.
Yeah.
And so I had this whole new group of people that were not like me. They weren't rebellious like I was. They weren't, you know,
They have tattoos.
they didn't have tattoos like me. You know, I said, what kind of youth are you? So
Where's your record at?
yeah, so I began to understand this very quickly that they're not like me. And if I'm going to reach them, then I have to, you know, tap into what they like. Okay. They weren't the ones to stay up late, play volleyball. Like I said, be rebellious and me looking for them. No, they love to be in church, partly because they were raised already in the children's church. Yeah. And they've already seen your group that just went through. So then I'm coming in now and I begin to notice they like to play instruments. I said, okay, these are music kids. These are church kids. They're innocent. Yeah. And so, you know, and that's the difficulty with becoming a youth pastor is you can feel as, well, I don't relate to them. You know, I can't minister to them and, you know, they're not like me and, you know, we can't use them. So I began to understand that also Pastor Roman being wise, giving me an assistant. I believe it was Justin, who wasn't like me. And I said, Pastor, he's not like me. You know, he doesn't like to preach. He goes, it's okay. I didn't choose him to be like you, right?
Wow.
You both had to have two different personalities to minister to these youth. And so we were able to do that. Like I said, the youngest was 12. We started using them on stage, ministering. We expanded the song service, brought in the lights. Then we began to make it more inviting. It was like a cool place to be, not just, you know, in the children's church, just sitting down. But now we had a full song service. You know, at the time we were mimicking elevation worship type of song service, have multiple girls singing on stage, a piano, everything.
Lead guitar, all that.
And so then we started going to the schools. I was ministering the schools. And we began to bring them in. And so that helped a lot to develop that type of ministry for the youth. And, you know, now today they're leading into the main song service, playing the songs. And so it just, from children's church song service to the youth Bible study to then this main sanctuary. So that works with ministry, with discipleship, everything, because we raised them in that environment that Pastor Roman brought in. And so that's one of the things that was key, is understanding their level, what they were good at, what they liked, and tapping into that and using that.
Yeah.
So that was
adapting to it, right? You had to adapt.
Yeah, and it was different for me, right?
Yeah.
And so especially you were a pastor, now you're a youth pastor, totally different dynamic. But I believe Pastor Roman said it when Pastor Brian took the youth again the second time, is we can either win one nation or we can come back and be a part of the youth and win multiple future nations and churches with the youth. And so that's how he saw vision in the youth.
Yeah.
And that's what enabled us to kind of gear them in that direction.
Yeah.
And so that was.
And so I know you're talking about connection and like it's important to make a connection. Do you see that as like one of the foundational things to reaching the youth is like you have to find a way to connect. You have to find a way to meet them at their level. Is that something that's without this, you won't be able to make an impact? Do you believe that's true?
You have to connect, but that doesn't mean connecting by dressing how they dress, right? Or listening to the same music, but connecting them on a personal level, relationship-wise. Like me and Pastor Brian were raised in the teenage Bible study. We did not connect with the leader. We were just rebellious, right? And so you get youth that come in from the streets. They don't have a father figure. They don't connect with their own family. So if you're able to connect with them, show that you care, right? That you care about their destiny, their potential, right? Their lives are in your hands, technically. Besides their home, it's in the church where you can kind of gear them in the right direction by connecting with them, right? And they'll never open up if you don't connect. And so that's very key, especially with the women, the young girls with the pastor's wife. They have to connect in order to open up and being able to speak into their life.
Were you able to, when you went to Detroit and then you came back and you come into the youth, were you able to use some of those lessons when you were pioneering to reach like the youth? Because I've heard it said in places before where they say being a youth leader is basically like you're pioneering a church within a church.
Yeah.
So was that like, were you able to use the experiences out there to make an impact in the youth?
Well, in the sense of fruitfulness, yes, right? Because you're out there pioneering and every soul matters. right? And Detroit was a very hard city. People living on the streets. The fatherlessness was the most in America in Detroit.
Wow.
Me coming from that kind of background of, I always looked up to my father to have that father figure, but it was a bad one, right? My dad didn't give it to me in a good way. So you come back and now you have youth that are looking up to you. For some of them, you are their spiritual dad. You are an example to them. So being a pioneer, caring for that one soul that comes to church, now you got the youth.
Yeah.
And it feels the same. It feels every soul matters, right? And so you are a father figure to them. And if you continue to see it that way, you'll care for them, you'll connect. Like every child you have, they're different. You don't just push one aside because he's not like you.
Yeah.
So you adapt to that. And that helped a lot.
Wow. So going back to what you said about going into the schools and making an impact there, what made you start going into the schools? I heard you went into like the police department, fire department. What caused all that? What started all that?
So around that time was our youth rally coming up. And so the theme was unashamed. And so I wanted our youth to carry that spirit of being unashamed of being saved, because we created now an environment with our song service in our Bible study that was inviting. And so I really wanted to target unsaved teenagers because at the time it was all church kids.
Yeah.
90% was church kids. And so because I was a pioneer before in Detroit, I felt we have to win the youth. If not, we're going to lose them.
Yeah.
And so we started going into the schools, their own schools. I was inserting myself in their schools, and so they couldn't hide. And so we began to have influence in a particular school where now they would have me come once a month. And then I believe it was Joaquin at the time was now representing our church. It wasn't only me now ministering, he would minister as well in the school.
Wow.
And so that was very beneficial. We were getting high school kids in our building on the Friday night. There were now youth nights. They weren't Bible studies no more. We weren't teaching, but we were preaching.
Yeah.
So we would have a full song service and then preach to them. And then we started going into the community, the police, because also I was trying to target the youth, the troubled youth. And so we would also let them know, one, thankful for their service, and then also if there was troubled kids, we wanted them to
Send them our way.
to send them to our church, because that's what I was trying to attract. Get these youth to understand, hey, this is what we're about.
Yeah.
We're unashamed of the gospel. We don't just keep it in ourselves. And it began to help. They began to have confidence going into the community.
Yeah.
And I also knew when they become future pastors, they're going to have to do that, right? They're going to have to tap into this. And so it was a great benefit. We enjoyed it. We saw fruit from it. So that was good.
Man, wow. So like you said, you start going into these schools. Well, now, years down the road, those teenagers that were in your group, they're making impact in the city. Just the other year, we had an event, and the mayor of McAllen came, and he said, I came because somebody in the church, one of the teenagers that was in your group, talked to me about this event. And they said, hey, come to our event, come sponsor us, come.
Wow.
And they saw something in him, and they said, hey, I see what's going on in him. I see there's something unique and special, and I want to visit that church to see where he's from. And so that you made impact by doing that into the generations that are going on now.
Wow.
Yes. And so that all has to do with establishing confidence in them when they're young. And so they have confidence in the church, right, in their ministry, but outside the church is what we wanted to see. Confidence in sharing your testimony, sharing who you are as a Christian.
Yeah.
And now, as we see, it grows into their future in what they want to become. And so, for instance, I was here during conference, and there was a young girl that was part of our ministry. She's 18 now. And she just came up to me and said, Pastor, the ministry you started in our school, I have taken it over. And now I lead the Bible studies and tell them about Jesus still. So it was good to see years later now, 3 years later, they're still influencing their city and in their schools.
Man,
Unashamed.
that's amazing. Pastor Brian, I know that you and your wife had got sent out. You were 20, 21 years old, and you got sent out as missionaries to Brazil. And I know as a teenager watching and hearing you preach, you had always said, "Man, my dream is to be, a young missionary. I want to reach the world." And you went out. You followed your dream. God opened a door.
Yes.
But then shortly after that, there was an infamous.
Wah, wah, wah.
There was an
You need
infamous
to put
phone
some
call.
inspirational background music.
And I remember hearing this quote. I don't know if it's entirely correct, but it goes like this. Pastor Roman was talking to you, and he says, "See, you can stay in Brazil and win a nation, or you can come back and help us win multiple nations." And he had left you at that to make a decision. And I want to know, what was that experience like, and what ultimately made you come back home?
Yeah.
So at the time, we were having a revival in Brazil. We had a full house. We were only there 4 months. And we had a group of teenagers coming to my house. We were ministering to them. Disciples were being made. But I got a phone call from Pastor Roman, and he said, I need you to come back and take the youth again. And then he likes to say, and it's true, there was this long silence. And
It was the delay because you're so far away.
right. Well, I can't hear you, Pastor. So I said, I don't know, man. And he's like, well, pray about it. But, the way I see it is that you could stay there and win a nation, or you could come back and help me win more nations through these teenagers. Wow. And so I said, I need to pray. And he said, you have a week. But I knew what I needed to do. So I remember I hung up the phone. I talked to my wife, and she was crying. I was not. And so then I 2 hours later, I knew. I prayed, and I knew, and I called Pastor Roman and said, okay, we'll come back. So we came back. My wife and I came back after 4 months in the mission field. We came back, and...
Is that a record, Pastor?
I don't know.
You broke a nation in 4 months. No.
So we come back, and we take over the youth, and we stay. I believe we stayed another 4 years with the youth, working with the youth, and you don't see that right away. You come back and you're working with the youth. They're 17, 18. So you're not going to see that right away, and it could get really frustrating when you have a missionary spirit. You want to be out, but now you're home. And so I made it a point to take my heart away, my passion away from the missions, and to put it into the McAllen church and into the McAllen youth, and to serve my pastor and his wife, both me and my wife. This was our mentality. And then now later, just this conference, my wife and I were announced into Sao Tome and Príncipe with Albert and Lorena, who are getting sent out to Hungary. And so Albert and Lorena are teenagers that we worked with. And also my neighbor across the ocean now is Beto and Alani, which were a part of our youth group as well. And across just a few hours away is Eric and Jordan, and we got to work with Eric as well. And so we're seeing that now, right? You sometimes think youth ministry, pastoring youth, has no benefits, or, it's not as exciting as being out there. But it's something that you see in the long term. It's something you see in the long term, and this is why it's very important that when you're leading youth, you have to think long term. You can't stay in moments, because teenagers fail. I got after Beto so many times. Albert, my wife, had to bring a lot of correction, but also coming alongside them and it's worth it, right? Seeing these young people now, where they're at now, in having invested in them years ago.
Yeah.
But Pastor Roman saw that,
Yeah.
right? I couldn't see that. Pastor Roman, he saw that, and this is why he was willing to spend the money. We like, oh, it's because of me. No, it's Pastor's thinking like 20 years ahead. He's thinking of so much more than just that. But that's how much he values the youth here in McAllen, that he's willing to not just simply put a Bible study, but put pastors in that ministry, because he understands the long-term effect.
Yeah. There's something that's always stuck with me since you got launched out to Brazil originally. And I remember you had gotten announced, you're on the stage, and we're all going up and, not crying because we're...
No, we don't cry.
Pastor Roman's disciples.
Yeah, we don't cry. We don't cry.
Everybody was bleeding from their mouth, biting their tongue.
And I remember going up to you, and as I'm there, you said, because one of the big themes we had was nation breaker. Like we want to launch out couples that break nations. And I remember being there at the stage Friday night of conference, and you saying you're a nation breaker. You're gonna be a nation breaker. And I remember, like, as I got older, struggling because that's always been my dream, but always coming back to the back of my mind is like I can't give up, because I know that Pastor Brian, Pastor Roman, this church, God sees something in me. Mm-hmm. And it was that impartation. It was just those words, 3 words. You're a nation breaker. And it stuck with me. And there's times where it's hard and I can't give up, because you know what? I know that there's something that's been imparted, and I know that one day I'm going to see the fruit of it. And so.
Yeah, and that's I didn't come up with that. That was Pastor Roman.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in his own discipleship that comes from Pastor Ruby and so on and so forth. But the idea is that I always would tell you all, anything I can do, you guys can do it.
Yeah.
But that's what Pastor Roman would tell me. Anything I can do, Brian, you can do it. And so, like I said, I would always just turn around, and whatever was put into me, I would put it into the youth.
Yeah. Man, that's great.
Fire.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now, Pastor Beto, not only are you a missionary out in Africa, but before that, you became the youth leader in McAllen. What was that experience like, being here in McAllen, being the youth leader? How did that go? How did that happen? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, it was great. So we're in Equatorial Guinea now, but yes, we were the youth pastors for about 1.5 years before we left. And going back, how pastor thinks always years ahead. What began when he took the youth and things began to change. What Pastor Brian began, there was no reference. There was no,
here's the handbook.
Yeah,
there
was no blueprint. He had to make the blueprint, and we were the guinea pigs. No, we were the disciples that did those things. And so he began that foundation, that structure. And then, a couple years later, Pastor Robert comes in, and he begins to refine what's there. And so when my wife and I take the youth ministry, everything was already a fine-tuned machine, well-oiled. Everything. You have kids fresh out of children's church that are in now the youth ministry, and they already know how to not just play all the songs, they know all the leads also, all the lyrics. They already know how to run lights.
They speak in tongues already?
Yeah. And so,
the whole deal.
Most of them. So when we took it was already running.
Yeah.
And so that has, the benefits, because you don't have to worry about, man, are they going to mistreat the equipment when we have park? That was already in them. There was already references that they had from us, from the ones after us, and now them. So it was great, you know. So now in that, the new challenge is, you know, where do you go from here? Because everything's already been done. Everything's already been refined. Everything's already, and so I began to notice that these teenagers, they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing because we've been doing it for so many years. And so it's like, okay, well, why are you saved? That's what you do. No, well, you need to know why you're saved, you know. And so I would talk to Pastor, and we have to, you know, and I remember him telling me something. I'm like, Pastor, they don't see it yet, or they don't know how to. And he told me, he's like, Beto, these kids, they're church kids that follow after church kids. There's no like raw teen that got saved. And he said, they already know what to do. He said, they just need to know why. And so when I was pastoring the youth, I began to just put foundational truths in them. And I began to tell them and preach to them that you're not just saved on fire for a year or two and then you backslide. You're saved for the rest of your life. And so there needs to be a longevity. You know, there needs to be these things that you start now, being radical now. You know, you're saved, not, you know, God saved you from your sins, but you're saved from God's wrath. You're redeemed. And so these things that I would put into them that said, hey, you know, you want to stay on fire. By the time, you know, boot camp's over, by the time school starts, that's the goal, and all through high school, not just this year, and so when we took the youth, everything was already running well. So putting those things in them, and so now they have the full spectrum, serving now, being radical now, but having the mentality, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. So it was great.
You know, you said something right now. How there was things that were like placed in, like in order. There's structure. There's all this. Did y'all have? Were you inspired by others? Where did these ideas come from? Like I know that we begin to have like youth rallies and youth convergences and all these other different things. Where did these ideas begin to pop up from?
Well, firstly, if you know Pastor Ruby, you know that his biggest focus is the youth.
Yeah.
Well, one of his biggest focus, right? The youth boot camp that he has. I mean, this thing it's an incredible avenue for essentially a conference for teenagers. In a controlled environment because teenagers are crazy.
Very controlled.
Very controlled and muddy. Pastor Ruby has a lot of good ideas, and so Pastor Roman started taking ideas from there. Pastor Ruby has the back to school rally. He has the spring break rally, and so Pastor Roman just started implementing that. What he saw Pastor Ruby doing, we would do it, and then also Pastor Roman would also look to Tucson, and so whatever Tucson was doing, we'd do that too. For example, Pastor Garrett was with Pastor Warner. They were doing, and I think they still do it, is the youth conversions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so Pastor Roman implemented that also, where we started having youth conversions, and that's one way we were getting ideas from our mother churches, from our grandmother churches.
Man.
Yeah, and so by the time I stepped in, all of that was being ran by the youth. And from the beginning, we were running those first youth rallies. And so, you know, we have pastors come to be the guest speakers. And so they come and they're just blown away. You have teenagers running everything. And they're blown away that, wow, that they're running that soundboard. Yeah, they know how to, they're doing their own lights. They know how to do their own lights. Even special music is teenage bands. And the pastors that would come, they're just always they're blown away that the teens can. But that started 10 years ago. Like we were saying earlier, because we were discipled and responsibility was put on us, and Pastor believed in us, Pastor Brian believed in us, we were like, we can do this. And so that just carried on and is still carrying on to this day.
Wow. Would you guys, what advice would you give to a pastor who wants to start a youth ministry? They don't have anything set up. There's nothing, but they have a passion for the young people they have in their church, in their city. What would you tell them? Hey, like, what are the keys? What is something that you could leave them with?
Just start with what you have, you know. Start with the teenagers you have. Jesse's mistake with David is that he did not see potential in him. And Samuel didn't either, right? But God saw potential in David as a teenager. And so you have to begin with being capable of seeing potential in these kids, you know. They could have a lot of weird quirks in them. They could be rebellious. They could be bound by all kinds of things. But you have to be able to see potential in these kids, and then give them an opportunity to express that potential, very much like what Pastor Joe Albert was saying, giving them the opportunity to mess up, to run something, be in charge of something, or whatever it might be. Enhance that potential, give that potential an opportunity to be expressed. And then I would say it's very important that you have to understand teenagers have plenty of friends. And so as a youth leader or a youth pastor, they don't need you to be their buddy, right? They need you to be their pastor. And so that doesn't mean you can't hang out with them. I remember one time I was playing Risk with some teenagers there in the concert hall, and Pastor Roman comes in and he's like, discipleship at its finest.
We're already conquering nations.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. So, there's that place where you have to have play volleyball with them, hang out with them, take them out. I remember we took them to the zoo. We lost a few of them there. No, I'm kidding. But
In the cage.
you have to be willing to have that relationship. But there also has to be an understanding. I'm here to lead you. I'm here to teach you. There has to be that respect, and all of that will be helpful.
Yeah, I would also just to add, whatever youth pastor or youth leader you're starting something, your pastor has given you expression to start that. Just remember that it's not your ministry, it's your pastor's ministry. And so you have to be in constant communication with your pastor where he wants you to take the youth. And so that's something that pastor would always remind me of, like, hey, let me know, and how everybody, and so that's one thing, is you have to remember that, yes, God puts you there. Your pastor is trusting you with their lives, with their futures, but, it's your pastor's ministry. Those youth, those teenagers belong to your pastor's church. And so you have to be able to work in that dynamic and learn how to operate there, still ministering to them, but always being in communication. And another thing I want to add is these teenagers, they just need somebody to believe in them. They just need somebody to support them, whether they're a church kid or a raw sinner that gets saved. They still feel, they may have a broken home or both parents in the home, but they still feel like, man, nobody believes in me. Nobody, my parents don't want to. And so if you just believe in them, put responsibility on them, show them like you matter to me, like Pastor Jobber was saying, right? The importance of a soul that would, from the pioneering perspective, and you just show them, I believe in you. You can do it. I trust you. You'll see them just grow into that. Somebody believes in me. I can do this. And so I would say that.
Excellent. All right. So last thing before we end. So if there's any advice you could give to a young person, like a teenager, they're just started serving God, or they're just listening to this podcast, and something that you could tell them to encourage them, or just help them?
If I could take one thing back, it would have been to stay in the church. Had I not left at 17, chasing after the influence of my father, the attention of my father, my story would have been different.
Yeah.
And so there's so many youth that are out there, they feel the grass is greener, they're missing out,
Yeah.
they feel their church is boring, and I'm telling them, stay. That's what I would tell them. Stay, fall in love with God, and like Beto says, find out why you should be saved, why you need to stay in the church, because that can spare you so much. There's so many teenagers that were with us, with Pastor Brian, that are still not back.
Yeah.
They've lost a lot, and so I'm sure they've heard it before, but now they can see our lives, our testimony. It would be stay in the church, and God has greater things for them, but it's connected with them finding out why and staying in the church.
That's good. If I can add to that, I think what I would say to teenagers is don't be afraid to go to your pastor for anything. I guess the obvious is when you mess up, when you fall into sin, or where you slip up. There's this, because of our fallen nature, we want to hide, or we don't want to go to our pastor or youth pastor because we don't want to sense or feel that rejection or feel like that disappointment, and so you'd rather hide it and keep it to yourself. And that's the worst thing you can do, because if you're gonna keep doing it, and you're gonna keep doing it, and you're gonna stay in ministry serving while harboring this secret sin or this error, whatever, this fault, until it just blows up. When in the very beginning you could have just gone. And that's the obvious when we say, well, don't be afraid to go confess. But just in general, anything, advice, counsel, don't be afraid to be open and be vulnerable. The last thing that your pastor or your youth pastor, the last thing that they're going to do is reject you or look down upon you because you're struggling, or because I would say that is, don't be afraid. You need to go to them. You need to build that relationship, because like we've been talking about, we need to connect, but it's hard for us to connect to the teenager if the teenager does not reciprocate. And so, we can build a friendship, but if the teenager doesn't go and open their heart, it'll be very challenging for the youth pastor to actually speak into their life. So that would be my advice: is don't be afraid to go to your pastor for anything. He's not going to reject you. He's not going to look down upon you. I knew it. All you are the same. No. He wants the best for you. And so I would say that to any teenager listening.
To piggyback off what you're saying, I remember one time I did something dumb, and I knew I was coming in for a rebuke, and Pastor Brian had found out.
Don't expose me, Joey.
No. So he found out, and he says, "I'll talk to you after service." And I said, "Oh man, I gotta wait till after service. It was a Bible study or something." And you didn't talk to me. And I remember it took me a long time to open up again, because I was waiting for that correction. And so I was like, man, I don't know. It was just something so weird. But as a teenager, I was just like, man, like, he's just holding out. He's just waiting. He's just waiting to rebuke me. And for a long time, it took me a while to like open up again, because I'm like, man, he never got after me for that thing. I never paid the penalty or whatever. And so like you said, you have to understand your best interest is in your pastor or your youth pastor's heart.
Yeah.
It's that they care for you. It's not just correction and rebuke, but it's love. And so I remember that, and I'm just advise you, if you ever, hey, they love you, they care for you, they want what's best for you. And so in saying that, though, I know that we talked about responsibility and like being a Christian and doing what's right, but there's also room for being a teenager, because it's not just all do these things, do these duties, and that's it. It's serving God is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to enjoy it, And I remember as being a teenager, those were the funnest years of my life, because we were disciples, but we were also just kids.
Yeah.
And so
breaking stuff,
messing around, having fun, going out.
Having fun breaking stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Now that we're on that subject, I gotta confess now. All these years later, no, I'm just joking.
But I remember one of the funniest things I remember is being a teenager and feeling like, man, like I'm a disciple. And we had to set up for an event, and my mom texted me, hey, I need you home at this time. And I just kind of blew her off because I'm like, no, discipleship first. I need to take care of the church.
My pastor needs me.
Yeah, exactly. My pastor needs me. So then, I don't go home. I had the car. I had the keys. So I don't show up. And then I'm working. My phone dies. And I just forgot about it. So then I'm working, and Pastor Oman pulls up. And I'm like, pastor's here. That's odd. And he pulls in. And I'd left my car at church, drove to the location. Somebody dropped me off. So Pastor Oman picks me up. He takes me to church. And then I get my car, and I go home. And I said, hey, Mom, Pastor Oman came and picked me up. That was kind of odd. And she's like, no, I called him because you needed to come home and do your chores. Oh, and so there's the balance. Like, you're still a teenager. You can still enjoy life and enjoy serving God as a young person. It's not just all these rules and strictures.
Do your chores.
Yeah, definitely. And listen to your parents. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. For this is right.
Yeah, absolutely. You should do your chores and then come do the ministry.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, we grew up in church or grew up in this environment, but like you guys were in a completely different time, different generation, different atmosphere. Like our good time stories are like, I'm sure compared to you guys when you were teenagers, like this is not even this is nothing. Like I'm just curious now that we're on the subject, like what would you guys do for fun after Bible study?
Well, me and Joe were in the same gang.
Matching tattoos.
You can't see my tattoos.
But I think I look back and I think, because we used to go to the youth rallies in San Antonio, and one of the big things we had was rap battles. So we would always rap battle, and I remember that's how I learned how to rap.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just like, hey, rap, make them some verses, and then you just say like stuff that doesn't even rhyme or make sense. And then Pastor Brian's like, hey, he can rap. We can have a band now.
Yeah, that's how YOLO started. We heard you in the
church van.
in the church van going to a men's class. I think it was.
Yeah.
It was a men's class, and I remember that. I spoke to someone else that had a rap band, like, hey, this kid could rap. You should let him in your band. He's like, no, I don't want a kid in my band. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to make my own band. And so we made a band called YOLO, which was you, Brandon, Daniel Valle, and Beto. And I think that band's still alive today, somehow.
Somehow, some
you're
way.
still in that band.
Yeah, I'm the only original member.
Yeah, we would practice in your apartment.
In your apartment.
I remember that, yeah.
With that green carpet.
You guys would stay the night at my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the carpet.
Man, it's crazy.
Yeah, but one of the things I appreciate is like we were always like we would joke around, we would have fun, we'd play sports and all that. But there was always this sense of like you and Pastor Robert, you gave us like dignity. Like I know like we were joking all the time, but when it came to ministering, when it came to doing things for God, there was this level of like, hey, we give you the respect so that you can do what you're called to do, what you're contending for. Yeah. And I remember that was one of the biggest impressions I had, especially with Pastor Robert. Actually, I don't think I've ever told you this, but like when you were younger, you were very good at like mocking people and saying, but one thing that you always did is you always encouraged people.
Yeah.
Like, hey, just do it. Yeah, man, you got this. and they do terrible, but you were like backing them up. You were their hype man, you know?
that's true.
And so even though like your natural instinct was to mock or to make fun of, your heart was, I'm going to encourage them so that they could reach their potential. And so that was one of the things that always stuck with me, is just like, he could tear me down right now, but he's not. He's encouraging me.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like key is like, you know, you don't always have to tear down people. You can build them up, and you don't know what you're doing in people's lives when you do that. All right, guys. So I think that's it. I just want to thank you guys once again for coming on the podcast. That was a great podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Good time.
Thanks.
Nice reminiscing. And so we just want to say thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Share this. Tell people about what we're doing here. Encourage people to listen. And before we close out, we're going to show some pictures of some of the teenagers when we were young. I want to thank you once again for listening to the Gen Lib podcast.